Until the very end. The tragic story of Alaska Airlines Flight 261. January 31st, 2000. A flight destined for disaster. The sun dipped low over the Pacific, painting the horizon in streaks of amber and crimson. Inside the cockpit of Alaska Airlines Flight 261, Captain Ted Thompson adjusted the throttle with practiced ease. Beside him sat First Officer Bill Tansky, his brow furrowed in quiet concentration as he scanned the flight instruments. They were seasoned pilots, each with thousands of hours in the sky. Their Boeing MD-83 had departed Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, en route to Seattle with a scheduled stop in San Francisco. The 88 souls on board, families returning from vacations, business travelers, and couples escaping winter, had no inkling of the battle that was about to unfold above the Pacific. In the cabin, flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisles. Linda Davis, the lead attendant, smiled warmly at a young girl clutching a stuffed bear. "Excited to get home?" she asked. The girl nodded, her father beaming from the next seat. At 3:49 p.m., cruising at 31,000 feet, the comm shattered. We have a jammed stabilizer," Captain Thompson radioed to Air Traffic Control, ATC, his voice controlled but tight. A subtle tremor ran through the aircraft, the kind that only pilots would notice. The horizontal stabilizer, a critical component that kept the plane's nose level, was stuck. Without it, they couldn't control their pitch, the very angle of the aircraft in the sky. "Let's troubleshoot," Thompson said, his fingers dancing over the overhead panel. Tansky nodded, flipping through the emergency procedures. "It's not responding to trim inputs. Let's try the alternate system." But nothing worked. Down in the cabin, tension rose. Linda noticed the faint change in the engine hum, the way passengers glanced toward the windows. She moved to the intercom, keeping her voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor mechanical issue. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." The word minor was a lie, but it was what they needed to hear. In the cockpit, the situation worsened. The stabilizer was not just stuck, it was failing. The plane's nose began to dip. "We're going to need to descend," Tansky radioed ATC, his voice cracked with tension. "Descend and maintain 25,000 feet," came the calm reply. They fought the controls, the yoke heavy and unresponsive, as if the plane itself resisted their efforts. Thompson's hands trembled slightly. "Bill, if that jack screw fails completely, we lose the stabilizer." Tansky didn't respond, he didn't need to. They both knew the risk. In the cabin, Linda felt the aircraft tilt forward. Passengers gasped as the ocean drew closer through the windows. She met the eyes of an older woman gripping her rosary beads. "We're in good hands," Linda whispered, though her heart raced. The pilots engaged the autopilot, but the system struggled to compensate for the failing stabilizer. Suddenly, beep, beep, beep. The autopilot disconnected with a jolt. The nose pitched downward violently. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. Alaska 261, we are out of control," Tansky shouted into the radio. The aircraft nosedived, plummeting thousands of feet in seconds. Gravity lifted passengers from their seats. Screams filled the cabin. Linda, strapped in, watched as a coffee cart slammed against a bulkhead, spilling scalding liquid across the floor. But then, "We got it. We got it back," Thompson gasped. They leveled off, barely, at 24,000 feet. Breathless, Tansky wiped sweat from his brow. "Let's get to LA. We can't risk San Francisco," Thompson decided. But time was running out. In the control tower at LAX, controllers cleared the runways. Emergency crews lined up. All eyes were on Flight 261, still high over the Pacific, but fighting physics and fate. Back in the cockpit, the jack screw, a component that controlled the stabilizer, continued its fatal grind. Unknown to the pilots, it had been worn down to the final threads. "Feels loose," Tansky muttered, gripping the yoke. Then, Without warning. Snap. A sickening jolt rocked the plane. The stabilizer had broken free. The aircraft flipped upside down in midair, spiraling uncontrollably. Passengers shrieked as the ocean spun into view. Then the sky, then the ocean again. Push. Push the nose up. Thompson yelled, using brute force on the controls. Tansky fought alongside him, both men knowing it was futile. The MD-83 was in its death dive. In the cabin, Linda unbuckled and crawled toward a frightened boy pinned against his seat by gravity's cruel force. She grabbed his hand, her own tears blurring her vision. Close your eyes. It'll be quick. The final moments stretched in agonizing slowness. Thompson's hands were bleeding, his grip iron on the yoke. Tansky's final words were a whisper, barely caught by the cockpit recorder. We did all we could. At 4:22 p.m., Flight 261 slammed into the Pacific at 250 knots. The impact was catastrophic. Debris scattered across the waves, the white splash towering into the sky, then silence. The aftermath was chaos. Coast Guard helicopters hovered over the crash site, divers searching the cold depths. There were no survivors. Investigators would later discover the cause: a worn jack screw, its threads stripped from poor maintenance practices. A simple mechanical failure had doomed 88 lives. Yet, in the cockpit's final minutes, the flight crew had fought with every ounce of skill and strength. They had truly stayed,